Hey everybody, today we are going to be doing another topic video, and this week I asked you guys to give me some of your hot takes. Before we get into that, I will plug my website. It is deepfocuslens.com. I am an artist. I do commissioned portraits and I do prints. If you're interested in that, you can go to the website, and it's deepfocuslens.com/shop. And if you have a question related to a commission or a print, you can email me. My email is in the description box below. And the first one is, if there is a main female character and a main male character in a movie, they don't have to end up together. I think in half the movies out there, that are not explicitly romance movies, the romantic subplot is just not needed. Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if that's necessarily a hot take. I think a lot of people probably agree with that. I just think for whatever reason, it's not complained about maybe enough because they've never really done anything about it. Because yes, we see entirely too many romantic subplots that are completely unnecessary. And what's annoying about it, I think, is it sends the wrong message to people, especially like young people that are growing up on movies. And it's like every single time that there's a female and a male, it's like they have to end up together in some way. And it's like, that's not necessarily true. I mean, I think human interactions, male and female interactions, are quite complicated. And I think you grow up and you realize it's really not like that. Very likely there would be instances of this where you think they're going to get together and you realize one is just not into the other. So yes, like kind of forced romance and stuff like that between the opposite sex to me is emphasized too much, especially in American movies, in American culture. But not only that, I do think, even especially when you have like a grand epic or something like that, and there's a lot of stuff going on and they always have to add in some, strange romance that just feels completely out of place. And that's why I love movies like Lawrence of Arabia or like There Will Be Blood. These are like big epics, but there's really not much need for female characters in it. So why have them? Like, to me, this is a very simple answer. Just focus on the things that are necessary. Trim unnecessary fat. But I don't know, I think it's something that you're always going to see just because, in this culture, romance is so heavily emphasized. Okay. John Wayne was a one-trick pony that played the same character in every movie he was in. There was really nothing that special about him. His acting was bad to mediocre at best. You could have replaced him with another actor and the movie would have been exactly the same. I agree with you, but I also kind of disagree with you. Yeah, John Wayne, I think, was a one-trick pony, but I think a lot of that comes from just, naturally, just like now, you get into a role and people remember you for it, and so naturally you play that role for the rest of your career because it's your most successful thing. It's your bread and butter. But yeah, I mean, just naturally watching the way he performs, it is pretty bad. I do agree with you. I think it is mediocre at best. And a lot of people make fun of that, just like that way he talks. He talks like he's drunk all the time. But, I think there's something to him at the same time. There is a sense of charisma. And sometimes that happens, Some people are bad actors, but yet they still have something about them. Like, look at Keanu Reeves. Look at the resurgence in his career. Is he a good actor? Hell no. But he's such a likable presence on screen, and there's something to that bad acting that is kind of appealing at this point. He's kind of figured out how to market that, I think. And I think John Wayne just kind of did the same thing, though he has an Academy Award, which is hilarious. But, he was also in a lot of great films by a lot of great directors, and I actually don't mind him in movies like The Searchers or like Stagecoach, Rio Bravo. I actually do kind of find that sort of performance compelling, even if it is bad, because he's such a towering guy just in stature. He's just big in the way he carries himself. And, there's just something in his eyes that I think is very comforting, maybe, which is kind of contradictory to kind of like the cowboy stereotype. But I do agree with you. I think there were much better actors, especially in Western movies, and I'll never understand why John Wayne is considered such a legend in that respect. I've seen Blade Runner twice, and I didn't really like it either time. I thought it was kind of boring. I also think Star Wars is overrated. I'll get to Star Wars later, so I'll just answer the first one. But yes, you are not the only one who feels that way. I always felt that I was in the minority as well, because the first time I saw Blade Runner, I admired it. I admired it, especially aesthetically and all that. It's incredible in terms of the world building, but it didn't emotionally resonate with me, and it still doesn't, though I really admire it. And I will admit, the more that I saw it, the more I appreciate it. I think I agree with you. I think the first two times I saw it, I was kind of like, I wasn't sure about it. Though with repeated viewings, it's something that I really enjoy. Though again, it just doesn't emotionally resonate with me. It's more something I appreciate than something that I connect to. There are other sci-fi films that I think really do have that almost a spiritual quality to them, and that's just kind of what I prefer. And speaking of Star Wars, I've never really cared for Star Wars all too much. I've always enjoyed the original trilogy, but I've never considered them some of the best ever. Yeah, me either. I mean, well, I did when I was a kid. I think when you're a child, of course Star Wars is the best thing ever. But I do think that, once you get beyond a certain age, it's like, I think it's time to grow up a little bit. It's great. Nostalgia is wonderful, but I think we just put too much stock in that as a culture. And I've said that many, many times. And I think Star Wars is kind of an example of that. I mean, I think Star Wars, for what it is, I think it's fantastic. But it's like, for what it is. It's an excellent movie. It's made beautifully. It's recycling a lot of things that we've seen before because, again, nostalgia sells, but it's packaged in a new way that is refreshing, that is exciting, that revolutionized special effects. And everything is told so well and, very focused. The hero's journey is pretty much perfect. And it's a perfect place, I think, for young writers, whatever, to study story structure or these kind of more basic, almost fairy tale like stories. I mean, it has everything. And so for a child, I think it's wonderful. And I think it's, even as an adult, it's fun to enjoy. I just think, especially since the new trilogy came out, it's just become insufferable the way that we fetishize Star Wars. I mean, people treat it like it's the Bible, like it's just the greatest thing that's ever existed. And yes, it is great for what it is, but it's like, it's not that great. There are plenty of other films out there, but naturally, you bring back something from our childhoods like that, people are going to go crazy, people are going to pay for it. So, it is what it is. Hook is an underrated gem that actually delves into the psychology of Peter Pan. That's one thing that I do appreciate about Hook. I like that it does something a little bit different. I like that you get to see Peter Pan grow up and then kind of relearn what it means to be a kid again. I think that's a fantastic idea. I just think with this movie, it wasn't executed that well. It is something that I naturally has like a sentimental value for me. It has a special place in my heart because of my childhood. I used to watch it every Thanksgiving. I just wish it had been better executed. And I couldn't even give you a good reason why because it's been so long since I've seen it. I do remember aesthetically really struggling with it. Everything just had kind of a real kind of fake sort of plasticky quality to it. But yeah, a great idea. I just wish it had been, better executed. Raiders of the Lost Ark is overrated. Indiana, at least for me, seems like a person who could easily come out of all the conflicts put in front of me. So the entire movie becomes very predictable and boring. Some scenes look really cool, but that is it. Okay, so I watched Raiders of the Lost Ark, or at least the last hour, not long ago, and I hadn't seen it in a long time, and I have to completely disagree with you. And I think all of your criticisms here, I think this movie is just not for you because all of your criticisms are kind of, that's precisely the point of the movie. So I think it's just not a movie that works for you. It's supposed to be like Flash Gordon, those old kind of 1930s movies that are very, very, very cheesy. That is entirely the point. So when you talk about, he can easily come out of all the conflicts, that's because it's the point. It's just it's like a theme park ride almost. So yes, you see all these booby traps and they're very obvious and everything. And all of it is meant to be very cheeky, very fun. I love that, Indiana Jones says things like, I think it's in Raiders of the Lost Ark where he says X never marks the spot. And then of course, completely contradicts himself in The Last Crusade when literally X marks the spot when they're in Venice. So, I mean, it's just very cheeky. There's a humor to it. I love it because I think what it does is, just like Star Wars, it takes something like a Flash Gordon idea and, brings it out. It's made by people who are wonderful filmmakers who really have a passion for that kind of nostalgia. And so they can bring it to life in a new way. And I think Spielberg was really kind of on fire at the time. He was doing some of his best filmmaking, at least consistently. And I do think his best films tend to be these kinds of movies, more kind of like the action, swashbuckling type of thing. I think he's better with more, movies that appeal more to children. And Raiders of the Lost Ark is beautifully made. I mean, really. And that's part of, I think, why it endures is because it's beautifully made. And, the music is wonderful. And they have, wonderful moments like the map scene. It's like that could have just so easily just been something they breeze right through. But that wonderful John Williams score and the buildup of the light, all that stuff is great. And, the face melting. It's just, this is before Spielberg got really soft And, you know, before everything was just full on CGI. And I like movies like this. Now, is it completely ridiculous? Absolutely. It's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, the Nazis are just cartoonish villains, but again, that's the point. I really love Raiders of the Lost Ark because it is very much that guilty pleasure sort of realm. Disney is the most disgusting studio in the entire industry. After growing up on their animated classics and Pixar, like we all probably did, I went through an existential crisis after the live-action Lion King came out. To go from Toy Story 3 Up and Inside Out to nothing but utter cynicism and laziness is, in only a few years, was like emotional whiplash. Then the behind-the-scenes story of live-action Mulan put them in a new category of evil for me. If I ever had a kid, I would never show them any of the new films of theirs. I wonder if anyone else went through a similar phase. But I mean, yeah, I think most people agree with that. Disney is, it is just a giant corporation, and it has taken over to such a degree that I think it's dangerous. And there's a big power dynamic, and that typically is not a good thing. That's typically, you know, a big, big red flag, just even on a basic level. Of course, you can read into Disney. I will not go into it here, but there's plenty of very shady things. And I think that if Walt Disney were alive to see it, I think he'd be utterly disgusted. But that's what happens, you know, just like Star Wars, it became so big, it's a Frankenstein monster. And, you know, it's no longer George Lucas's own property anymore. It's out of his hands. His baby is no longer his. And, you know, it's inevitable. And yeah, Disney has taken so many different franchises and has changed them. But yeah, I know what you're talking about here with the live action movies. And that, you know, again, that's just blatant, you know, demographics. They are looking at people my age, and we grew up with those like 1990s Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin and all that. So they just think, oh, well, they'd love to see it as adults. And knowing how nostalgia is just propagandized in this culture, yes, of course, everyone goes to see it. I personally just have no desire to see a live action remake of something where, you know, there's very little creativity. All it is really is just kind of trying to keep something as close to the source material as possible while changing little things to make everything very woke in this new world that Disney especially is trying to push. And all the things that might be controversial or ruffle feathers, they have to call attention to it because, you know, suddenly that makes you virtuous and a good human being. And yeah, you know, it's just soft. And I was always afraid of movies becoming this, like they're just churned out on an assembly line. And yeah, studios like Disney are part of that, and it's very sad. I've talked about it a lot. But that is the video. Thank you guys so much for answering the question. Here are my Patreon supporters. Thank you guys so much, and welcome to the new members. I've gotten several new ones in the last week. If you'd like to become a patron, the link for that is below, as well as all of my social media information. You can watch more videos here, and you can subscribe if you'd like. Catch you next time.